Thank you for tuning in to another episode of InRange. This is another in the American-made series. If you haven't been watching, we have asked the question here on InRange that if one wanted to purchase an entirely American-made red dot sighting system, not something from any other source than America, what would be your best choice on the market? And what are the even options on the market? This isn't about being against anyone or pro-America. It's really just an academic question. If you wanted to stay within the United States with American-made manufactured product, what are the options available to you? And are they equivalent, or are they even competitive with other ones that are also available? Or maybe not available based on supply chain. Those are two things that could align in this question. We've already done the Leupold RDS yellow ring or gold ring. We're going to go ahead and pursue the black ring of that as well. That's coming up later. But today we're going to focus on the Leupold LCO. The LCO was issued quite a ways back, along in tandem with the Devo, which was a magnified optic. That's a different topic, not for today. But I think, if I remember correctly, this is one of Leupold's, if not Leupold's, first entry into the red dot tactical environment. It takes the same footprint as a standard like EOTech XPS2 holographic sight, so it's rather large in terms of how much rail space it takes for a red dot sight. It comes in at just under 10 ounces, at about 9.5 ounces, with a market price of about $700, MSRP of $900. So it's on the higher price end of any red dot sighting system, even more so than some of the Aimpoint equivalents. But maybe it does some things that the Aimpoint can't, or perhaps this is going to be the best American red dot sight. We don't know yet. We're going to take this video over to Sinister Rifleman, who's going to do an unboxing and general walkthrough of the optic. Then we're going to do some other testing, parallax testing, etc., and then we'll have conclusions at the end. One of the things Leupold does claim about their red dot sight system here, the LCO, is that it's waterproof, not water resistant, waterproof to 66 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and set it to the brightest setting. And so waterproof to 66 feet. And so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to test that on this video today. So at the end of the video, stay tuned and we'll find out how true that claim actually is.
I'm going to open the box and show you what it comes with. This is a used demo unit that Leupold has provided for the purposes of this video. So all you're going to find inside the box is the LCO itself and one CR123 battery. You can tell this is a used unit because there is some wear on the battery cap from installing it and removing it, and there's some wear on the bottom of the sight. There are, however, no scratches or obvious defects on the lens, despite this having been used before. First up, I'm going to install the battery. Leupold advertises the battery life as 5 years, which is substantially better than their lower cost offering, the Freedom RDS. The CR123 just drops in the port like this, screw the cap back on, and you can use a flat blade screwdriver or a coin to twist it tighter if you need to, but it's really easy to tighten it down all the way by hand. This dial is the brightness control. There are 16 brightness settings. The center button is the on and off switch. Tapping it will turn it on. Holding it down will turn it off. I'm going to tap it, turn it back on. I can dial the brightness up. Blinking means that it's at the maximum setting, so I can turn it back down the other way. There is no stop on the brightness adjustment, so you can keep rotating it. The only thing that you have to know that it's at the bottom end of either setting is the blinking. So then I can rotate it back up. And we see there is the maximum brightness again. I'm going to assume the settings that are not visible are night vision compatible. So it's at the maximum setting. We confirm that by turning it up. Now let's count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Once I'm about halfway, it's really hard to see the dot with the naked eye. I'm going to assume that the bottom settings are definitely night vision only settings. The LCO mounts to your firearm with a single cross bolt to index on the Picatinny rail and a clamp that secures with this nut. You can either use a socket driver or a crescent wrench to tighten this down. Leupold specifies that it be torqued to 65 inch-pounds, but if you don't have a torque wrench, just take care not to over tighten it and strip it out. The windage and elevation adjustments are exposed, and they are graduated in half MOA increments. I mounted the LCO to one of my 16-inch KE15 carbines and zeroed it at 50 yards. Out in the desert here, I'm shooting at steel at 50 yards, transitioning from target to target and tracking the spinner to just get a feel for how easy it is to do with the LCO. The LCO's large window lends itself well to this. It's quite a big field of view with both eyes open, very little clutter for the shooter to look past or look through, and I feel like this would really allow you to push your speed at close ranges once you got familiar with this optic. The large window is perhaps the best feature of the LCO, and when I test it in this next clip, shooting, transitioning shoulder to shoulder, it feels very natural, and my eye always sees the dot as soon as I cross my shoulders with it, because the window is so large. With smaller lens red dot optics, sometimes it requires more of a precise head position to see the red dot, but with the LCO, I always immediately see it. The glass is clear enough that I can make hits on a 200-yard IPSC silhouette unsupported, as long as I'm doing my part. For this test and going forward, Carl will be participating in the reviews to check the quality of the red dots and help with the parallax tests. I do wear corrective lenses that correct my vision to 20/20, but sometimes that can be an issue or a different consideration. Carl has uncorrected 20/20 vision, so getting his input on this is a good thing.
First impressions. It's got a giant wide field of view, and that would be good for night vision. This has night vision, right?
Yeah, it does have night vision settings.
So one of the things that like EOTech's really good for night vision, because that wide field of view means it allows the most amount of light through. So if you wanted a standard dot reticle and this has night vision settings, this would be well apt to that. At first impression, the dot looked really crisp to me until I looked at it closer and brightened it for daylight conditions, and it has a dot with this like little comet tail coming off at 7 o'clock. Are you having that?
I saw the same thing, and I honestly didn't notice it indoors when I was playing with it. But out here, it seems like, you know, the brighter you make it to accommodate for the sunlight, the more of that kind of a fantail coming off the lower left portion of it I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock for me.
Yeah.
So if you're the viewer, the dot's here, and it's like this little comet coming off right here. But I could try and get a picture of that through the glass on the camera. That's hard to do. The brighter you make it, the more obvious it is, and the lower you bias the dot to the bottom of the field of view, the worse it gets. All right, so this is the parallax test with the Leupold LCO. I'm going to fire 2 shots with the dot centered, then I'm going to fire 2 shots with it biased, right, left, etc. I'll explain as I'm doing it, but here we go. All right, those were 2 shots with the dot to the center. Now I'm going to bias the dot all the way to the left. Dot all the way to the right. Dot all the way to the top. Dot all the way to the bottom.
I'm going to do the parallax test. First, 2 rounds to the center, 2 rounds with the dot at the bottom of the lens, 2 at the top, 2 to the right, and then 2 to the left.
Dot all the way to the top. All right, so a little time lapse here, the magic of video making. You didn't know this, but this has been sitting in here for 30 minutes. Now, obviously this is not 66 feet per the claim. It is just a bucket of water. But let's go ahead and see what we got. And we have perfect functionality. Nothing seems to be harmed. In fact, honestly, the water is dripping right off, running right off the lenses in a way that this would not even obscure my visibility or ability to use the optic at all. So Leupold's claim of this being waterproof is absolutely true, not a false claim, and that's a cool feature. So neat to test and neat to see that to be real, and that worked out really great. So that's a cool thing right there. I'm going to go through this optic in terms of the bad first, then the mediocre, and then the good, so we can finish on a good note. So the bad. You just got done seeing the part where we did the parallax test, and this did not do optimally in the parallax test. It did okay. If you biased the dot to the left or to the right or to the bottom, we didn't see any problems, but both Fagan and I, repeatedly so, when we biased the dot to the top of the glass, which happens when you're in unorthodox positions like in a VTAC barricade or two-gun match or maybe combat, we saw a very significant parallax shift to the right on the target. And that was only at 50 yards. At 100 yards, we would have missed the target entirely. So as with all optics, you want to have your sighting reticle, whatever that is, to be as centered in the glass as possible during all firing conditions. But that's not always viable, especially in dynamic conditions and situations or under the clock. So for whatever reason, biasing it to the top caused a parallax shift. None of the other biasing areas of the glass did that. So that's something to be concerned about. Is it a showstopper? No. How much of a problem is that? I don't know. It is what it is. The other thing I'm going to go ahead and say on the maybe the bad side is it takes a lot of real estate on your rail for what is just a red dot sight. Typically when you take up this much rail space, you're doing that with some sort of holographic sight like an EOTech, which to be honest with you, I really like the EOTech style reticle. I prefer them over just dots, but that's of course personal preference. But it's a lot of rail space for what is just a red dot compared to a lot of other things on the market today. Not necessarily the mounting point, but this big old bulge coming out the back for zeroing. Does that matter to you? Maybe not. I am able to put this on there and still fit a magnifier from Vortex along with these proper iron sights that are normally on an HK 416. So it is possible to fit everything on your rail, it's just a little tight. Those are the other thing. The dot's not as crisp as it could be. Both Fagan and I saw it appear to look in an oblong shape, kind of biased and down to the left. We call it a comet tail. And we noticed that as we went to the brightness settings that we required to be out here in the Arizona sun. And as you go down lower, it does diminish to the point where it's kind of gone, and then it's a relatively crisp dot. But if you blow this thing out to the brightness you sometimes need out here, it definitely starts becoming an oblong shape. I do not have an astigmatism nor corrective lenses required for my vision. Fagan does, but we both saw it. Is it the least crisp dot I've ever seen on a red dot? No, not at all. It's okay. It's certainly serviceable. But at the higher settings, it is not as crisp as others that I've seen. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most crisp red dot possible, like the highest end aim points that look like a perfect little disc, and a 1 being some sort of leaper's garbage, I'd give this a 6 or 7. So not the end of the world, but certainly something to think about. I'm going to go to the middle ground. What's not bad, but what's just mediocre here? The price. Street price $700, MSRP of $900. This is on the higher end of cost for a red dot sight. You can buy really high-end stuff for $700. You can also buy stuff that I'm going to go ahead and say may be of equivalent performance in many ways for a lot less. But if you really want an American-made red dot sighting system, this one certainly would suffice at this point from our testing, and you might just have to pay a little bit of American-manufactured tax. To be honest, it just is what it is. Another thing is, as you move the dot around, the glass is not perfectly flat. There's a little bit of fish-eyeing that goes on around the edges. It is so insignificant that it's not that big a deal, but it's something that I should mention. On the good. This thing's rugged. When you pick it up, you feel it. It feels like it's built kind of like an ACOG. It just feels strong. It feels durable. I'm going to go ahead and say that it probably is. Another thing that's really cool is it takes CR123 batteries. Everything takes CR123 batteries, so guess what? Battery compatibility is a really lovely thing. Battery life's decent from all the reports. We can't necessarily test that for this video, but what we hear, it's good. I do like that it's got both a rheostat and a button. So one of the things you can't really do on an aim point is you turn the rheostat to the brightness you need at this given moment and just leave it on. Well, battery life maybe doesn't matter because it's an aim point, but you have to set it to where you want it and leave it there. Other things like the Leupold Freedom RDS, you push the button until it's the brightness you want, and then you push the button for it to go back down. I hate that. That's the worst of all worlds. This one, you set it to the brightness you want, and then you can turn it on and off with the button. One click turns it on, you hold it to turn it off. but when you turn it back on, it's at the brightness you want it to be set at. I really like that. That's a neat thing for the middle of the night. If you want to pick this up, just turn it on and you know that the brightness is set to what you want it to, especially in tandem with your white light or whatever else you have on the weapon. That's a neat feature. So all in all, I'm going to go ahead and give this a maybe. Really depends on what you're looking for. If you really want to buy American and you are not terribly worried about a crispness that's a 7 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10, you like the durability, and you like that rheostat setting where you can turn it on and off, I'm going to say this is probably good for you if you're willing to pay the price. Certainly good if you're going to go with night vision. Seems to be a really great optic for that. So compared to the Freedom RDS, this is a far better option in regards to that, but then again, the Freedom RDS is what, half the price. So I'm not sure what to say to this. This is kind of a lukewarm thumbs up-ish kind of review. I certainly would not feel disabled or problematic in using this red dot on my gun. So guys, hopefully you enjoy this kind of stuff. Leupold did send this to us as a demo model. We did not buy this, but all the ammo, the time, etc. is all completely based on Patreon supporters like you. We are not sponsored by anyone, not Leupold, no one. The only funding for this channel is not even advertising. We don't get that from YouTube either. I proactively demonetize the channel. It's from you, the viewer. If you like what InRange does and brings you these type of legitimate, honest reviews, please consider supporting us on Patreon. If you already do, thank you. If you can't, we understand. Just subscribe to one of our multiple distribution points. You can find them all at InRange.tv. Thanks for watching.